That badge is fake. Officer Ryan Mercer said it with a short laugh, as if the truth had already been decided before Darius Cole finished opening the credential case in his hand. The late afternoon sun stretched across the Westbrook Shopping Center parking lot, turning windshields into bright mirrors while shoppers moved between storefronts carrying grocery bags, coffee cups, and takeout containers. Less than 20 feet away, Malcolm Price stood with both hands visible, his eyes steady, his posture controlled. Darius did the same. No sudden movement. No raised voice. No attempt to challenge Mercer. The white police officer kept his service weapon lowered but ready as he maintained distance from the two black men and ordered them not to move. Darius held the credential wallet where Mercer could clearly see the photograph, the federal seal, and the words Federal Bureau of Investigation. "You can verify it," Darius said. His voice was calm enough to make the tension around them feel even sharper. Mercer glanced at the identification again, then back at Darius. "You expect me to believe this?" Malcolm shifted his eyes toward the far side of the parking lot. A silver sedan sat near the western exit, roughly 100 feet away. Beyond it, a dark sport utility vehicle remained parked beneath a row of maple trees with its engine running. Mercer noticed neither. His attention stayed fixed on the credential case. Darius did not argue. "Call dispatch." Mercer gave another dismissive laugh. "You do not tell me how to do my job." Malcolm looked down at his watch. For 32 and 26 seconds. Darius caught the movement from the corner of his eye. Mercer caught it too. "What are you checking?" Mercer asked. Malcolm looked up. "The time." "Why?" Malcolm did not answer. The silence seemed to bother Mercer more than any explanation could have. A woman leaving the nearby coffee shop slowed for half a second when she noticed the scene, then continued toward the sidewalk. Darius recognized her immediately. Mercer did not. She never looked directly at either agent. That was intentional. Everything about the afternoon had been intentional until Mercer stepped into it. The location, the silver sedan, the distance between the two federal agents and the vehicle they had been watching, the woman near the coffee shop, the dark sport utility vehicle waiting at the edge of the lot. Darius looked at Malcolm. No words passed between them, but the message was clear. Stay steady. Do not compromise the operation unless there is no other choice. Mercer interpreted the glance differently. "Stop looking at each other," he ordered. Malcolm raised his hands slightly higher. "We are standing still." Mercer turned back to Darius. "Put the badge away." Darius slowly closed the credential wallet, but kept it in his hand. "You have my name, my photograph, and my federal identification. Verify it." Mercer stared at him, his expression hardening. He believed the badge was part of the lie. He believed the two men in front of him were trying to outsmart him. What he did not understand was that the badge was real, the surveillance operation around him was real, and the clock Malcolm had just checked was already counting down toward the moment when every assumption Mercer had made would begin to collapse. 20 minutes earlier, Westbrook Shopping Center looked like any other place people stopped on their way home. Cars moved slowly between painted parking spaces, automatic doors opened and closed beneath bright storefront signs, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted from the corner cafe whenever someone stepped outside. Darius Cole stood beside a dark blue sedan near the outer edge of the lot, one hand resting loosely near the roof, while Malcolm Price leaned against the passenger's side with a paper cup in his hand. Neither man looked hurried. Neither looked nervous. That was exactly how they wanted it. About 100 feet away, a silver sedan sat near the western exit with a clear path to the main road. Darius watched it only through reflections in nearby windows and polished car doors. Malcolm did the same through the side mirror of their sedan. "Still there," Malcolm said quietly. Darius nodded. "Let him get comfortable." Malcolm took a sip of coffee and looked toward the storefronts. "You always this patient?" "Only when impatience costs more." "Hey." Short vibration came from Malcolm's phone. He did not take it out. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly and glanced toward the coffee shop. Inside, a woman in a tan coat sat near the window with a tablet open in front of her. She looked like any customer killing time over a drink. She was not. At the far end of the lot, a dark sport utility vehicle remained parked beneath a row of maple trees with its engine running. Every part of the scene had been arranged to look ordinary. Darius checked his watch. 4:28 in the afternoon. "Window should open soon," Malcolm said. "If he follows the pattern." Darius kept his eyes on the reflection of the silver sedan. People are predictable until they know they are being watched. Malcolm gave a faint smile. Comforting. The driver of the silver sedan remained inside. No phone calls. No visitors. No sudden movement. Just waiting. Darius had spent years learning that good surveillance depended less on staring at a target than on understanding everything around it. Who entered twice? Which vehicle circled the block? Which person stopped too long? Which sound did not belong? That was why he noticed the marked patrol car before Malcolm did. It entered from the south driveway and moved through the lot at less than 10 miles per hour. Officer Ryan Mercer was alone behind the wheel. He glanced toward a loading zone, then toward a delivery van, then toward a group of shoppers near a sandwich shop. His eyes moved again and stopped on Darius and Malcolm. The patrol car continued another 50 feet. Malcolm saw it now. Local patrol. I see him. Mercer drove past without stopping. Darius kept his posture relaxed and looked toward the coffee shop instead. The patrol car reached the next aisle. Its brake lights came on. Malcolm lowered his voice. He is turning around. Darius watched the movement in the sedan's window reflection. Do not react. Mercer made a slow loop around the end of the parking row and came back toward them. This time he drove even slower. He looked at Darius, then Malcolm, then the dark blue sedan, then the silver car across the lot. Darius could almost see a conclusion forming behind the windshield. Mercer passed them again and stopped roughly 30 yards away. His engine remained running. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. Malcolm glanced at Darius. This could complicate things. Darius watched Mercer step onto the pavement. Only if he decides it should. Mercer closed the door and started walking toward them. Darius did not know exactly what assumption the officer had already made, but he knew one thing immediately. Mercer was no longer approaching to satisfy curiosity. He was approaching to confirm a conclusion. Mercer stopped several feet from Darius and Malcolm and let the silence sit there before he spoke. The pause felt deliberate, the kind of pause meant to make the other person fill it first. Afternoon, he said. Darius gave a small nod. Officer. Mercer looked at the dark blue sedan, then toward the silver car near the western exit. You two been out here long? Malcolm answered calmly. A little while. Mercer shifted his attention to him. Doing what? Malcolm kept his voice even. Waiting. For who? Darius stepped in before the questions reached anything they could not safely explain. Is there a problem, officer? Mercer looked back at him. I'm asking the questions right now. His tone was controlled, but something had changed. What had sounded like conversation now felt like inspection. Darius recognized the shift immediately. Understood, he said. Then are we being detained? Mercer studied him. Why would you ask that? Because I want to know whether we are free to leave. Malcolm said nothing, but his eyes moved briefly toward the silver sedan. The driver inside had not moved. Mercer noticed the glance. You keep looking over there. Darius answered without turning his head. We are standing in a parking lot. There is a lot to look at. Mercer did not smile. Identification. Darius kept both hands visible. What is the reason for the stop? Mercer exhaled slowly. Suspicious behavior. What behavior? You two are hanging around, watching vehicles, and acting like you do not want to answer simple questions. Malcolm looked at him. We have answered your questions. Mercer's jaw tightened. Then show me identification. Darius glanced toward the coffee shop. The woman in the tan coat was still near the window with her tablet. At the far end of the lot, the dark sport utility vehicle had not moved. The operation was still intact. For now, officer, Darius said. If this is a voluntary conversation, we would rather continue our afternoon. Mercer stared at him. That sounds like you are trying to avoid me. It sounds like I am asking whether we are legally required to stay. A shopping cart rattled behind Mercer as a man pushed it toward a pickup truck. Two teenagers walked past carrying fountain drinks. Nobody else seemed concerned about Darius and Malcolm until Mercer made them the center of attention. Hands where I can see them, Mercer said. Both men complied immediately. Malcolm's phone vibrated once inside his coat. He did not reach for it. Mercer heard the sound. What was that? My phone. Do not touch it. I was not going to. Mercer looked between the two men again, as if their calm responses were becoming evidence instead of reassurance. You both seem very comfortable with police procedure. Darius answered carefully. We understand the importance of staying calm. Mercer narrowed his eyes. That is an interesting answer. Malcolm kept his hands visible. It is a normal answer. Mercer looked toward the silver sedan again. That car belonged to either of you? No, Darius said. Then why do you keep watching it? Darius held his gaze. You are making an assumption. Mercer's expression hardened. And you are making this harder than it needs to be. Darius felt the space around them tighten. The target was still in position. Their team was still waiting. But Mercer had reached the point where every attempt to clarify the situation seemed to confirm the suspicion he had brought with him. What began as a question was becoming an order, and Darius knew the next few minutes would depend on whether Mercer still cared about finding the truth or only about proving himself right. Mercer kept his eyes fixed on Darius as the ordinary noise of the shopping center continued around them. A cart wheel squeaked near the grocery entrance. A car door closed 2 rows away. Someone laughed outside the coffee shop, unaware that the space beside the dark blue sedan had become tense enough to make every movement matter. Take out your identification, Mercer said. Darius did not move. You asked us to keep our hands visible. Mercer's expression tightened. Then tell me where it is. Inside my coat. Mercer turned toward Malcolm. Yours too. Malcolm nodded once. Yes. Mercer shifted his stance and looked between them. One at a time. Darius spoke slowly. Before either of us reaches inside our clothing, I want to be clear that we are following your instructions. Then stop explaining everything. Darius let the comment pass. Malcolm glanced toward the silver sedan. The driver had adjusted the rearview mirror and shifted slightly behind the wheel. Small movement. Important movement. Darius saw it too. Mercer noticed the glance and immediately looked toward the car. There it is again. Malcolm looked back at him. What? You keep watching that vehicle. I am looking around. No. You are tracking it. Darius kept his voice calm. Officer, nobody here is threatening you. Mercer looked back at him. You do not decide that. The words landed quietly, but they changed the temperature of the moment. Darius kept both hands open where Mercer could see them. Then let us give you accurate information. Mercer studied him. Go ahead. Darius nodded slightly toward his coat. My identification is in the inside pocket. I will reach for it only if you tell me to. For a moment, Mercer said nothing. His eyes moved from Darius's hands to the coat, then toward Malcolm. Slowly, Darius began lowering one hand. At the same moment, Malcolm shifted his weight barely an inch to give him space. Mercer reacted immediately. Do not move. Both men froze. Malcolm raised his hands higher. Darius stopped with his hand halfway down. Mercer's posture changed. His hand moved toward his holster. Both of you stay exactly where you are. We are staying still, Darius said. Mercer drew his service weapon and kept it lowered in a controlled position while increasing the distance between them. No one shouted. No one rushed. That made the silence feel heavier. Several shoppers slowed when they noticed what was happening. Malcolm looked once at Darius. Stay calm. Darius understood. The operation still mattered, but the priority had changed. Officer, Darius said, listen carefully. I am a federal agent. My credentials are inside my coat. Mercer stared at him. Federal agent? Yes. Federal what? Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mercer gave him a look that made his disbelief clear. Darius continued. You can verify everything I am telling you. I am asking permission to reach for my credentials. The silver sedan remained near the western exit. The woman in the tan coat inside the coffee shop had stopped looking at her tablet. The dark sport utility vehicle beneath the maple trees was still in position. Around Mercer, the operation remained invisible because he had not yet learned how to read it. One hand, Mercer said at last. Slowly, Darius lowered his right hand inch by inch, reached inside his coat, and removed a black leather credential wallet. He held it away from his body and opened it. The photograph matched. The federal seal was clear. The words Federal Bureau of Investigation were impossible to miss. Mercer looked at the credentials, then at Darius, then back at the credentials. For 1 second, Darius thought caution might finally replace certainty. Instead, Mercer's mouth curled into a faint smile. The truth was now directly in front of him, and Darius realized the next decision would reveal whether Mercer wanted an answer or only wanted to be right. That badge is fake. Mercer said it with the same certainty he had carried from the moment he stepped out of his patrol car. Darius held the credential wallet steady, giving the officer every chance to look again. The photograph matched. The federal seal was clear. The words Federal Bureau of Investigation were impossible to miss. Still, Mercer gave a short laugh and shook his head. You really expect me to believe this? Darius did not raise his voice. You do not have to believe me. You can verify it. Malcolm stayed several feet away with both hands visible, his attention divided between Mercer and the silver sedan near the western exit. The driver inside had shifted again. A small movement. A meaningful one. Darius saw Malcolm notice it and understood immediately that the surveillance window was narrowing. Call dispatch, Darius said. Run my name. Contact the Federal Bureau of Investigation Field Office. You have more than one way to confirm who I am. Mercer looked at him as if the suggestion itself were disrespectful. You do not tell me how to conduct a stop. Darius kept his tone even. I am telling you how to verify the information you asked for. Mercer turned toward Malcolm. And you are supposed to be federal too? Malcolm answered calmly. Yes. Mercer gave another dismissive laugh. Convenient. Malcolm did not respond. He looked down at his watch. For 32 and 26 seconds. Darius caught the time from the corner of his eye. The countdown had begun. Near the coffee shop, the woman in the tan coat stood and placed her tablet inside a shoulder bag. At the far end of the lot, the dark sport utility vehicle remained beneath the maple trees, but its brake lights flashed once. Mercer noticed neither. Put the wallet on the hood, he ordered. Darius complied slowly, setting the credentials on the dark blue sedan where Mercer could see them clearly. Now verify them. Mercer glanced down but did not reach for his radio. You think showing me a badge changes everything? Darius answered. It should change what you know. Mercer frowned. What I know is that two men have been watching a vehicle, refusing to explain themselves, and now one of them wants me to believe he works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Malcolm spoke quietly. Then confirm it. Mercer turned sharply toward him. I was not talking to you. Malcolm kept his hands where they were. Verification answers the question. Mercer took a slow breath and looked between the two men. Darius could see the problem clearly now. Mercer had tied himself to his first conclusion so tightly that accepting new information felt like losing control. The silver sedan's brake lights came on. Malcolm saw it. Darius saw it. The woman near the coffee shop adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped toward the door. Malcolm's phone vibrated once inside his coat. He did not move. Mercer heard it. Do not touch that phone. I am not touching anything, Malcolm said. Darius checked his watch. For 32 and 38 seconds. Why are you both watching the time? Mercer asked. Darius looked directly at him. Because time matters. Mercer narrowed his eyes. For what? Darius said nothing. The answer belonged to an operation Mercer still did not understand. Across the lot, the silver sedan shifted into drive. The dark sport utility vehicle remained still for one final moment, then its lights came on. Malcolm glanced once toward Darius. Darius gave the smallest nod. Hold position. Do not break cover yet. Mercer saw the glance and misread it immediately. Stop communicating with each other. Darius turned back to him. We are standing still. We have answered your questions. I showed you valid federal identification. You have chosen not to verify it. Mercer stared at him. Chosen? Yes. The word landed harder than Darius intended, not because he raised his voice, but because it named exactly what had happened. Mercer had been given evidence. He had been given an easy way to confirm it. He had been given an exit. He had rejected all three. The silver sedan began rolling toward the western exit. Malcolm looked at his watch again. For 32 and 46 seconds. Around them, the operation started to move quietly into its next phase. Mercer still believed he was controlling two suspicious men beside a parked car. What he could not see was that the next minute had already started arranging the consequences of every decision he had made. The silver sedan rolled toward the western exit, moving slowly enough to look ordinary to anyone who did not know what to watch for. Darius knew better. Malcolm knew better. Neither man moved. Mercer remained focused on them, still treating the federal credentials on the hood of the dark blue sedan as if they were part of a lie he had already decided to believe. Stay where you are, he said. Darius kept both hands visible. We are staying exactly where we are. Malcolm glanced toward the moving sedan, then toward the coffee shop. The woman in the tan coat stepped outside with her bag over one shoulder and paused near the curb. She never looked directly at them. Instead, she adjusted the strap once, then twice. Darius recognized the signal immediately. The target was mobile. Team 1 had taken over. Mercer noticed only that Malcolm had shifted his eyes again. What are you looking at now? Malcolm answered calmly. The parking lot. Mercer gave him a hard stare. You keep watching everything except me. Darius spoke before Malcolm could answer. Because there are other things happening here. Mercer looked toward him. Such as, Darius did not respond. At the far end of the lot, the dark sport utility vehicle pulled away from the maple trees and started toward the same exit as the silver sedan. A second unmarked vehicle appeared near the south driveway. Mercer noticed that one. His expression changed slightly. Who are those people? Malcolm checked his watch. For 32 and 58 seconds. Darius saw the time. The operation was progressing exactly as planned. Mercer looked from the approaching vehicle to Darius. Are they with you? Darius answered in the same calm tone. You already have the information you need to answer that question. Mercer glanced at the credential wallet on the hood. For the first time, uncertainty began replacing part of his confidence. I told you I am not accepting that at face value. Then verify it, Darius said. You have been given that option repeatedly. The woman in the tan coat crossed the lot without coming near them. Malcolm's phone vibrated twice inside his coat. He did not touch it. Darius knew the code. Target transferred. Surveillance intact. Mercer heard the vibration and stiffened. Do not reach for that phone. Malcolm kept his hands exactly where they were. I am not moving. The dark sport utility vehicle disappeared through the western exit behind the silver sedan. The second unmarked vehicle stopped about 40 feet away. Its driver's door opened. Supervisory Special Agent Laura Bennett stepped out wearing a dark blazer over plain clothes. She closed the door and started walking toward them with the quiet confidence of someone who already understood the entire situation. Mercer watched her approach. Who was that? Darius checked his watch. For 33 and 14 seconds. My supervisor. Mercer gave a skeptical look, but it lacked the force it had carried a minute earlier. Laura continued toward them without rushing. Malcolm lowered his eyes toward Darius for half a second. Darius gave the smallest nod. The covert portion of the operation was over. Their target was moving under surveillance, and there was no longer any reason to protect their identities. Mercer looked at the badge on the hood again, then at Laura, then at the unmarked vehicle behind her. The separate details were beginning to connect whether he wanted them to or not. Darius watched the change happen in real time. Certainty became doubt. Doubt became calculation. Mercer had spent the last several minutes insisting that the two black men in front of him were the ones hiding something. Now the parking lot itself was beginning to show him that the only person missing the truth had been him. Laura Bennett stopped beside the dark blue sedan and looked first at Darius, then Malcolm, then the credential wallet resting on the hood. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes took in everything. Mercer shifted his stance as if preparing to explain before anyone had asked him to. Special Agent Bennett, Darius said. Laura gave a small nod. Status. Malcolm answered. Target transferred. Team 1 has control. Laura glanced toward the western exit where the silver sedan and the dark sport utility vehicle had already disappeared. Good. Then she turned to Mercer. And this? Darius kept his voice even. Officer Mercer stopped us during surveillance. I identified myself, presented federal credentials, and asked him to verify them. Mercer responded immediately. I had legitimate concerns. They were watching a vehicle, they would not explain what they were doing, and I had no reason to trust identification I had not confirmed. Laura looked at him. Did you attempt to confirm it? Mercer hesitated. Not yet. Malcolm checked his watch. For 33 and 23 seconds. Laura did not react to the time. Did you contact dispatch? No. Did you request a supervisor? No. Did you run his name? Mercer's jaw tightened. The situation was moving quickly. Darius said nothing. The answers were doing more than any accusation could. Laura reached toward the credential wallet only after Darius nodded, opened it briefly, and verified the identification. These credentials are valid. Mercer looked toward the storefronts, then back at her. Fine. Then this was a misunderstanding. Darius picked up the wallet and slipped it back inside his coat. A misunderstanding changes when the facts change. Mercer looked at him. I was trying to do my job. Darius held his gaze. And I gave you information that could have helped you do it. Laura's phone vibrated once. She checked the screen. Target secured. Operation intact. Malcolm let out a quiet breath and lowered his hands slightly, still moving carefully. Mercer noticed the shift and seemed to realize that the federal operation had continued around him despite everything that had happened. Laura looked at his body camera. Is your camera recording? Mercer glanced down. It should be. Do not touch it. Mercer frowned. Why? Because there has been a detention involving federal agents during an active operation. The recording needs to be preserved. Mercer looked irritated again. You are making this sound like I did something criminal. Laura answered calmly. I said the record needs to be preserved. Those are not the same thing. Darius appreciated the distinction. This was not about humiliating Mercer because he had challenged federal agents. It was about making sure every decision could be reviewed without being rewritten later. Malcolm glanced at his watch again. For 33 and 40 seconds. Less than 90 seconds had passed since Mercer laughed at the badge. Then his radio crackled. A dispatcher asked for his status and referenced an earlier traffic assignment on Jefferson Avenue. Mercer reached toward the radio. Unit 12, I am tied up at Westbrook Shopping Center. The dispatcher paused. Copy. Sergeant Turner is requesting your location. Were you cleared from the Jefferson Avenue assignment? Mercer did not answer immediately. Laura heard the question. So did Darius and Malcolm. Darius watched Mercer's face and saw the same certainty that had defined the stop begin to weaken under something he could not dismiss so easily. Documentation. Radio traffic. Timestamps. A supervisor on the way. Mercer had spent the afternoon treating his own judgment as the most reliable fact in the parking lot. Now facts were arriving from every direction, and none of them were asking for his permission. Mercer finally answered the radio. Unit 12, Westbrook Shopping Center. I diverted after observing suspicious activity. The dispatcher replied almost immediately. Copy. Sergeant Turner is en route. Confirm your body camera remains active. Mercer glanced down at the device on his uniform. Affirmative. Laura Bennett did not react, but Darius noticed the hesitation before the answer. Malcolm checked his watch. For 33 and 48 seconds. The clock was still moving. Less than 2 minutes earlier, Mercer had laughed at a federal badge because he believed his first impression mattered more than verification. Now every second was producing a record he could no longer control. Officer Mercer, Laura said, do not adjust your camera or any equipment until your supervisor arrives. Mercer looked at her. I already told you it is recording. Then preserving it should be simple. A marked patrol vehicle turned into the parking lot less than a minute later. Sergeant Michael Turner stepped out, closed the driver's door, and walked toward them with a focused expression. Mercer began explaining before Turner had reached the dark blue sedan. Sergeant, I stopped these two men because they were watching a vehicle and refusing to explain themselves. One of them produced credentials I could not verify. Turner looked at Darius. Darius slowly removed the credential wallet and opened it. Turner studied the identification, then looked at Laura when she presented hers. Federal operation? He asked. Laura nodded. Active surveillance. Agent Cole identified himself during the stop and repeatedly asked Officer Mercer to verify his credentials. Turner turned toward Mercer. Did you call dispatch to verify him? Mercer paused. Not yet. Why not? The situation was developing. Malcolm checked the time. For 34 and 8 seconds. Turner looked toward Mercer's body camera. Dispatch asked whether that camera was active. Is it? Mercer nodded. Yes. Turner keyed his radio. Dispatch, preserve the camera audit log and advise whether the system shows any interruption during this stop. A brief silence followed. Then the dispatcher answered. Sergeant, system log shows a manual interruption lasting 23 seconds, followed by reactivation. Mercer's face changed. Turner looked directly at him. Did you deactivate it? I may have hit the control accidentally. During the detention? Mercer hesitated. Possibly. Turner's expression hardened. Do not touch it again. Darius remained silent. The record was speaking for itself now. Malcolm looked at his watch. For 34 and 18 seconds. Turner asked dispatch to preserve all available footage, radio traffic, and incident entries. The dispatcher then added that Mercer had entered a note describing Darius and Malcolm as possible law enforcement impersonators before any credential verification had been attempted. Turner looked at Mercer again. You documented them as impersonators before checking the identification? Mercer answered quickly. I believe the badge was fake. Based on what? No answer came. The silence lasted only a second, but it carried more weight than anything Mercer had said. Turner took a slow breath. Ryan, I am relieving you of duty effective immediately. Mercer stared at him. You cannot be serious. I am. Keep your hands visible. Turner continued in the same measured tone. Because the audit log, your incident entry, and the statements made here raise a specific question about whether official records were intentionally altered during a detention, you are being detained pending formal review. You will have full due process. Mercer looked toward Darius, perhaps expecting satisfaction. There was none. Darius did not smile. Malcolm did not move. Laura simply watched. This was not revenge. It was accountability arriving through documentation. Turner secured Mercer's service weapon according to department procedure, then placed him in handcuffs without spectacle or force. Malcolm checked his watch one last time. For 34 and 26 seconds. Exactly 2 minutes had passed since Mercer laughed at Darius's federal credentials. Around them, the parking lot remained ordinary. Shoppers kept walking. Cars moved through the lanes. Coffee cooled inside paper cups. But the balance of the moment had changed completely. Mercer had believed authority meant his judgment did not need to be questioned. 2 minutes later, he was learning that authority without accountability was only another decision waiting to be examined. 3 weeks later, Darius Cole returned to Westbrook Shopping Center just after 4 in the afternoon. The parking lot looked exactly as it had before. Cars moved slowly between painted lines, shoppers crossed toward the grocery entrance, and the coffee shop windows reflected the maple trees at the edge of the property. Nothing about the place suggested that a federal surveillance operation had once unfolded there, or that one officer's decisions had triggered a formal investigation. Malcolm Price arrived a few minutes later carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Darius and leaned against the dark blue sedan. You heard from Laura? He asked. Darius nodded. This morning, the review had moved forward. The department had preserved the body camera footage, audit logs, dispatch traffic, and Mercer's written entries from the stop. Investigators were examining the 23-second interruption in the recording, the decision to classify Darius and Malcolm as possible impersonators before verification, and the circumstances surrounding Mercer's departure from his earlier assignment. Sergeant Michael Turner had submitted his report, and Mercer remained off patrol while the department determined whether policy violations or criminal misconduct had occurred. Malcolm took a sip of coffee and looked across the lot. I bet he thinks the worst mistake was laughing at the badge. Darius watched a father guide his young daughter across the crosswalk near the grocery store. It was not. Malcolm turned toward him. No. Darius shook his head. The mistake happened before I ever showed him the badge. Malcolm understood immediately. Mercer had formed his first judgment before he saw a federal seal, before he heard the words Federal Bureau of Investigation, and before he had any verified information about why 2 black men were standing beside a car. Everything that followed had grown out of that first assumption. People keep talking about the credentials, Darius said. Like that is what made the stop wrong. Malcolm looked toward the western exit where the silver sedan had disappeared weeks earlier. It made the truth harder to ignore. Exactly. Darius lowered his coffee. But the truth should have mattered before the badge came out. A breeze pushed a loose receipt across the pavement. A delivery driver passed nearby without looking twice at them. 2 men stood beside a sedan drinking coffee, and nobody asked them to explain why they were there. It was so ordinary that it almost felt important. Malcolm looked at Darius. You think Mercer understands that now? Darius considered the question. That depends on what lesson he thinks he learned. What do you mean? Darius looked across the rows of cars. If he thinks the lesson is to be more careful because the next black man might work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, then he learned nothing. Malcolm nodded slowly. Darius continued. The badge proved where I worked. It did not make me more deserving of fairness. It did not make my questions more legitimate. It did not make my dignity more valuable. Malcolm lifted his cup slightly. That sounds like the part no report can measure. Darius gave a faint smile. Some things do not fit into reports. They stood there in silence for a moment, watching people move through the same public space that had once become the center of suspicion, authority, and consequences. There was no victory celebration, no revenge, no satisfaction in seeing another person fall. Only the quieter recognition that accountability mattered because power mattered. Mercer had believed authority gave him the right to decide what was true before the evidence arrived. Darius had learned the opposite. Real authority begins when certainty makes room for facts, and real justice begins before anyone has to prove they are powerful enough to deserve it.